Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I have interviewed hundreds upon hundreds of songwriters about the writing process. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So I've always been interested in treating songwriters the same way that we treat poets and traditional prose writers, as writers, plain and simple. There is no talk of how bands get their name, favorite tour stories, favorite foods, band drama, or anything else. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers as we go deep, deep, deep into the writing process. That's it, nothing else. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the podcast, Samantha Crain is my guest. Her latest album, which I love, is called Gumshoe. And if you listen to this podcast, if you've listened to it more than once, you know that I always start with a basic question, and that is it important to write every day or just to write when the mood strikes? And not often, I don't know why I said often, occasionally songwriters will talk about the seasons of writing, that they write during certain seasons, and not the seasons according to the calendar, but they have writing seasons when they write and then seasons when they take off. And Samantha Crain is very much one of those writers who is what she calls herself is a seasonal writer. And she said, I need to have those times of being fully in bloom and then fully hibernating. So we've got a lot of metaphors there. That's how I get my best, my most genuine work. So she doesn't write every day. She deliberately takes time off because that's when she comes back, she's at her best. And again, I hear that the idea of seasons sometimes, and we explored that on the pod. And I love also, we talk about the importance of the ritual, and she's got a good one. She likes to write at the dining room table with the view of the entire room. And she says it feels like I love this. It feels like an unplanned mood board if I need a starting point. And there's a lot of stuff in her periphery, in her vision. So she'll pick a spot at the table where she can see everything around her. And that's kind of like a mood board. It's, I'll write about that book or that chair. And that inspires her. I love that idea. I've never heard that before, but I love that. So anyway, really like this conversation. Talked a lot about the process, as you can tell. So dig in. Here is my interview with Samantha Crain. Again, her latest album out now is fantastic. It is called Gumshoe. And here's Samantha Crain on the pod. First of all, I love the new album. I really do. I'm listening to it the past couple of days, and I love it. So thank you for putting out such a great album. So I start with a pretty simple question all the time, and that is, do you think it's important as an artist to create in some fashion every day, whether it's writing or anything like that, or do you think that forcing the issue can make things derivative?
Um, I have never really been one to hop on the thing where you like get up and do journaling every day and kind of work that every day. I think for me it works a little better and feels a little bit more genuine to who I am and like my cycles of creativity when I can sort of be in an inactive and active writing stages. So it's like I kind of feel like I'm always writing, but in the inactive stages, it's more about just like taking in life experiences, maybe jotting a few notes down, like as if I come up with an idea, but I really don't sit down and do the actual work of writing until I feel this like urge within me to be like, okay, it's time to go into that active writing stage. Um, that's just worked for me best. I feel like I'm somebody that really works in seasons. I I feel like I have to have those times of being like fully in bloom and then also those times of being like fully hibernating and dormant. And that just works best with like my natural creativity. And I feel like I get my best work and stuff that feels most genuine to me when I can like let myself into those cycles.
And I hear that often, that kind of cyclical nature. So are those deliberate cycles where you say, I'm just gonna, I will take a certain amount of time, or I think you mentioned urge. So how do those cycles work exactly?
It's nothing that I really plan out. I sort of just go with gut feelings. I feel like I can tell when I'm depleted or drained or need need time to sort of live life and experience things and talk to people and be a good listener. And then I can also feel whenever I have um, a lot of stuff bubbling up inside of me. So I sort of just go on gut feelings, and try not to put too much pressure on what those cycles are looking like. Um, I feel like I put a lot more pressure on myself when I was younger. Um, one, because like I had the physical and the mental capacity to do it without getting too burnt out. But now that I'm getting older and I've been doing this for, 20 years, I think I am more concerned with longevity and sustainability of this. And like I am trying to just be more intuitive with what I'm feeling as an artist, I guess. Um, I yeah, I don't think I'm very deliberate about when I'm going through those cycles.
So do you get anxious if the urge hasn't happened for a while?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I probably like everybody else that you've talked to. Um, every time I write a song, I have a moment where I fear that's the last song that I've ever written, you know? And because I think that's because we don't understand it really. It's like we really at the end of it we can talk about like how songs get made. Um but that's more of like a generalization because at the end of the day it is kind of magic every time. Like you can't quite put a pin on how it's happening. And I think when something is so knowable, it's a little bit scary that you'll never get to like experience it again, or you'll never be able to like conjure it again. So yeah, of course I get worried um if I haven't had the urge to write something in a while. But I think, this far in, I just have a very deep trust of myself that I'll just keep doing the thing that I've been doing. Um, and that somehow um, tends to take over the worry, I think.
So does the urges happen because of a specific life experience, an event, or is it just this kind of accumulation of things? I've got some quotes over here by writers, and Maya Angelou, I think, has a good one relating to what you're talking about. She says, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." And I liked, I think that she's talking about that urge. I mean that, but she says agony, right?
Mhm.
So is that urge ever an agony? I guess this is a multi-part question, but because I hear urge a lot too, but I don't know if that urge is because, oh my gosh, this just happened, I have to write about it, or it's collective experiences that say, okay, it's overflowing now. I finally have to release it.
That's really interesting. I wonder if she's talking about it being agony before she can can bring it out, before she can tell it, or if the agony is like the process of the telling. I can understand it from both ways. I think agony can be that impatient with ourselves to because of our like limitations as humans, like our the agony of wishing we could just conjure the thing that is inside of us to be outside of us, or um maybe the agony is kind of the toil of making sure that we're doing the story justice. I can see both sides of it. Um, I I think for me, there are definitely like certain big life experiences that are sort of catalysts for um, getting things out. But I don't know if it's as simple as that because I feel like a lot of times when I'm writing about something that is pretty close to in a timeline of like when it's happening, like say I experience something and I'm writing about it 5 or 6 months afterwards, there is like a closeness to it that you feel this urge to get that story out. But you're also at the same time dealing with stories that happened 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I always feel like the events in my life are maybe like a catalyst to get things out, but more often than not, I'm dealing with things that are further away. I think I get a lot of clarity from things being like I think further down the line. Um, but I think when I say catalyst, I mean, big things that happen in your life kind of jolt you awake, jolt you out of maybe a hibernation period where it's reminding you it's good that you're getting rest. It's good that you're rejuvenating yourself. It's good that you're living a life. But at the same time, you've only got a finite number of days here. And don't you want to get more work out and more work done? And my answer usually is yes, I do. So let's get to writing.
It's funny because I was going to ask you that later, kind of whether you need distance, and you answered that for me already. But there are people that say you have to have distance to be able to write about something, and others that say the more distance you have, yes, you have perspective, but you lose the immediacy of the moment and the rawness of it if you take too much time. Um, it can work both ways.
I Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it just depends on what kind of writer you are, really. I've always considered myself to be a bit more observational. Like, even whenever I'm writing about myself, I'm sort of writing about it, um, like from a bird's eye view, like I'm watching myself experience something. But then there are writers that are very, uh, like first person, like, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking, this is how I'm experiencing something. Um, so I think it just comes down to like knowing what your tendency is within writing and um, just trying to capture that as much as possible. I always feel like when I write something that's very in the moment, anytime I've tried to write something as I'm experiencing it, uh, I don't tend to think that it ends up being my best writing because I feel like I feel like fairly, I'm just not, like, in a creative headspace whenever I'm experiencing that, I'm more into trying to, like, feel my emotions all the way through or be like a human being. I don't feel very creative in the moment. I know a lot of writers that those are their most creative moments. I would probably benefit from being a bit more embodied in my creative moments rather than being uh, so intellectual about it. So I I I think that's just sort of my tendency is to write about things after some time has passed, and I can kind of remember. I do take a lot of notes when I'm experiencing things, so I feel like I do have a lot of I have sort of like a conduit to the moment at a later date.
So the songs that come out the fastest for you, are you are you less likely to trust them? And again, I feel I hear that both things from some songwriters and writers say the stuff that happens the fastest That's the stuff you've got to be most skeptical of. Others say if it happened in 5 or 10 minutes, there's a reason, and I'm not going to touch that. So, where do you stand on that?
I every time a song has come really quickly, those are always my best songs. So I trust a fast song 100%. And I think the ones that I end up laboring over, uh, they still have potential to be a good song, um, but it's missing. Maybe that's my sense of immediacy that I get if I'm not writing from a point where I'm deep in embodied, like experiencing something. The immediacy comes from me not allowing myself to the like me not allowing myself the time to be critical of myself. And that's what I feel like those songs that come really quickly, that's what you're kind of taking out of the equation is the moment where you start second guessing yourself or being critical of yourself, which I always feel is uh I've never really found use in that, like in the moment of creativity. I find that it's useful in moments of editing, but I'm not sure that I enjoy its presence when I'm like just trying to write a song from scratch. Um, so I always trust the songs that come the quickest.
I always, one of my favorite essays, and I mention this in every interview, is the essay by Anne Lamott, the novelist. And it's from her book, Bird by Bird. And the essay is called Shitty First Drafts. And it's about prose writing and the idea that the first draft has to be shitty. That, and I think writers will tell you that. Prose writers, at least, no prose writer would ever say, edit as you write or think about these things as you write. And I interviewed Christian Lee Hudson a couple months ago and actually wrote down a quote that he said because I found it to be so revealing. And I'd love to get your take on this. And this is a little bit of what we're talking about now. And he says, my biggest hurdle as a writer is trying to hack my brain to become less critical. And for him at least, it's that idea that as you're writing, you're thinking too much. You got to get out of your way as a
Mhm.
writer, right?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that, what he said. And that's sort of what I was like trying to say. I think those songs that come really quickly, it is in a way, um, it's coming so fast because you have somehow like bypassed that moment of like criticalness in yourself. I feel like every song could come that fast if we could somehow always bypass the critical sort of side of ourselves. Um, and I'm not exactly sure like how those moments come. I don't know if there is a biohack. I love that he said hacking. It's like such like a um that's such like a buzzword right now, like biohacking our like
Right.
body chemistry and all this, So like yeah, I don't know if there probably are ways to like, hack into uh that uncritical brain. And I'm sure that that's what a lot of like um writing methodologies and writing practices are sort of dealing with, maybe the point of doing like the writing every morning thing is to get used to reading your shitty writing, or something. So you're like, you are less critical of yourself and therefore it will turn into something good. I kind of like I do go through I do read all of these like songwriting books, even though I don't know how much I put them into practice in my own life, but I always am interested to see what other people are doing. And I think the thing that I've found most useful and most beneficial is kind of a principle of the Jeff Tweedy song, writing a song book. I don't know if you've read that one or not. I think it's How to Write One Song. Or I don't. His whole idea is that even if something is like 5 seconds long and it's just a little blip of an idea, it's still a song. And that has been really helpful to me because that kind of keeps the criticalness at bay, I think. Um, it allows me to like step into the process of creativity without having as much expectation of myself and knowing that whatever it is that I make in that moment is it wasn't there before and therefore that's kind of magical. Um, that has been the most useful thing to me, I think, to keep the critical brain at bay. But I get where Christian's coming from because that's probably also my biggest hurdle as well.
All right, so I want to switch to the ritual here. I had interviewed Suzanne Vega last week, and she talked about how she lives in New York City, but she has a house on Long Island. It sounds like on the water, overlooking or near the ocean. And that when she finds that, and she finds that to be a productive place for her to write, it's this small house and there's a desk there. And no matter what she does in the house, there's always two things on the desk. And that is, I think she said a thesaurus and a rhyming dictionary. And that's all that's there. And whenever she goes there, she knows that it's almost like, okay, because she's sitting there, things are going to happen. I certainly have a ritual. My whole ritual, what my ritual involves never writing and revising in the same place. I'll never that if I write in one place, I got to revise in another. And there are certain times a day when I'm at my most effective. So I'd love to hear if you have any kind of ritual, whether it's time of day, things you have to have with you, favorite place, favorite room, anything like that. How important is that to you?
I don't know that I've uh, explicitly like planned it to be this way, but I've really over the past 4 or 5 years um, almost solely written at my dining room table, which is barely a dining room table because it's always covered with other stuff. It's like it's where I do most of my like creative work. So it's got all of my like beading supplies, and then it's got my computer and my notebooks and things like that. And I think I've just, for whatever reason, have gravitated towards sitting at that table. It's usually always morning. I feel like my brain is at its best, um, least defeated, I guess, like in the morning. And so I always feel like my energy is higher in the morning. And I've usually had, if I'm really gonna like sit down and write, I try to kind of, get like a massive pot of coffee going. And I always sit at this one seat at my dining room table, which faces, it's sort of like from there you can see the rest of the house. And I'm not really sure why I do that. I think it's because I can sort of see out the window and I can also see in my vision like a lot of things. Like I can see into these rooms where there are books and uh, pillows and quilts and chairs and tables. And for some reason, I that feels like an unplanned like mood board. If I need a starting point, I can kind of just like, oh, there's a book title. Like the other day I wrote a song where the first line of the song was the title of the book that was just staring at me. It's just like give me kind of a starting off point. And that's what I feel like I get a lot of stuff in my periphery sitting at that one specific seat. Um I usually recently have written a lot with like GarageBand on my iPad, which is something that I've not really done in the past. I've kind of always just started with like a notebook and a pen, but for whatever reason, over the past 3 or 4 years, um, I've really enjoyed like having my like opening like a garage band session and having it kind of going. Um, so I can, as I'm thinking of words or lyrics, I can kind of sing them, and that way I can capture like melody ideas too as I'm going. Um, and I also think it just helps because then if something does come really fast, then I'm already I'm already plugged in to capture it. Um, also, I live like in a very uh, it's a very like dead sounding house because it's like all carpeted. It's like a carpeted rent house. So um, just to have like a little bit of environment or reverb like in my ears makes everything feel a little bit more magical. I think a lot of times I'll have like a pile of notebooks next to me because I always like am am taking notes of various things that I, words that I find interesting or um newspaper headlines that I think have like an interesting uh, sound to them or story ideas or just any kind of ideas that I think one day, oh, that might end up in a song. And I usually have a stack of those next to me too, so I can sort of have access to ideas. I also utilize the thesaurus in the writing dictionary a lot, but I just use the one on the computer. So
But I love that idea that how did you figure out, I've never heard that before, that you have a space kind of where you can see everything around you. I mean, I'm guessing that you just happened on that actually accidentally rather than, "Oh, let me sit in this chair and have a view of all these things." I just think that's really cool. I've never heard that before, but how did you discover that?
yeah, it was just an accident, really. I for whatever reason, um, right about the start of when I was writing my album before this, A Small Death, I was sort of in the process of writing those songs, and I just sat down at the dining room table one day, um, with a guitar and was just sort of like noodling around, and I just noticed that like ideas for a song just like kind of came really quickly to me because I had like a view of all of these things that were like invoking different memories or different ideas or different images in my head. And then it happened again. Like I sort of just sat there and realized that having a view of all of these things around me, it made the free association of like coming up with a song just kind of happen quicker. Um and that's the other thing that I'm always trying to like figure out how to get into the meat of making as quick as possible because the other killer of creativity, at least for me, is sitting there so like long enough to where you realize that like you haven't had an idea yet and you get a little bit defeated and so you just walk away from it. And so if I can get to like the the sort of like meat, the impetus of like an idea as quick as possible, that's always best for me. Um And yeah, I just think I just kind of by accident figured figured that out by sitting there one day, and it just kind of kept happening. So it was a happy accident.
Alright, now my next question. When it comes to writing lyrics, are you a pen and paper person or a phone/computer, iPad person?
Um, okay, so weirdly, I am a like laptop computer lyric writer, which I feel like is probably really rare these days. I think people are either super analog or on their phone. And those are sort of like the 2 methods. But for whatever reason, maybe it's like the early millennial in me, I just like I love a laptop computer and just having like a fresh Word document where I can, write things and then be like, "I like that line, but I don't like it here, so I'm just gonna move it down here for a minute and see what I can do." I just find the workspace of like a laptop computer to be very, uh efficient and, like, accessible to me and how I, like, see words, I guess.
So, and I know also that I know that you're also a voice memo person because of you of life experiences and I'm guessing you just have and songwriters tell me they have thousands of voice memos, but there's no organization to them whatsoever. So, is that the way it is with you, or is there any sense of organization?
No, it's exactly that way, which is I have thousands of voice memos with absolutely no organization. Most of the time, I don't even take the time to change the title of the voice memo to give it any sort of descriptor or hint as to what it might be. It's just like, that I think my phone saves it as like the date. So it's like the date and the time. That's like, and it's like, who knows? Um, so those are, I find that to be pretty fun though. Like, uh, it's like finding the $10 bill crumpled up in your pocket from like last winter, when you pull your coat back out. That's sort of what my disorganized jumble of voice memos can be when I sit down to write and just be like, okay, let's go listen to some of these and see if it sparks any ideas. And if nothing else, it's like embarrassingly funny.
And you have notebooks too, so right next to you at that table. So, how far back do those notebooks go?
I mean, like I was cleaning out a desk the other day because I have piles of notebooks. And I I'm not sure. Usually the pile that's on my dining room table is just like the ones that are the most recent. So the ones that are on my dining room table are usually like the past year. But then I have notebooks going back to when I was like 15 or 16 years old, um, that don't get visited very often because it's like so hard for me to even like thumb thumb through them. But I have them. Um, yeah, same with the voice memos because every time I like get a new phone or something, I always upload my voice memos like into this like exhaustive like Dropbox folder that just has years and years and years of voice memos from phones like dating back to, 2004 or something. And every once in a while when I'm on a walk or something, I'll open that folder and start listening to things. And I actually have found things um, in some of those really, really old voice memos that have ended up being more current ideas. I mean, even for this record that I'm about to put out this on Friday, the word gumshoe, I've had that written in notebooks since I was 17 years old, I think. I thought that that was like an interesting word, and I started writing it thinking, someday I'll figure out how to use this in a song. And yeah, it took almost 20 years for me to figure out how to like put it in a song or write a song surrounding it. But that was like that was like the last time I put that in a notebook, I think was, other than writing the song Gumshoe, um, was probably 7 or 8 years ago, I think. So I just happened to stumble across it and put it in my newest notebook. It was like I think I revisit my notes fairly often just so I'm kind of constantly they're somewhat fresh on my brain as to like what I have access to. So I will, you know, go through notebooks, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, just to kind of refresh, what sort of ideas I might have to work with. For instance, there's this lyric that I've had. It's just like a single line. I'm not going to say it because I haven't used it yet, and I don't want someone to steal it from me. But I want so badly to put it in a song. It's like one of my favorite sort of metaphorical lyrics that I've ever thought of or ever written. And I've tried to make it like work in songs multiple times, but it hasn't been the right fit. And so it's just sitting there and I know it's sitting there and I think about it all the time, but I'm not gonna like force it in until it's like ready for its place.
I'd love to discuss books with songwriters. So, uh, Who are you, a genre person? Do you have favorite authors? Who do you like to read?
Um, so right now I'm kind of in my like bestseller moment where I have sort of dipped out of any sort of like intellectual that's not the right thing to say, but I tend to gravitate towards just like really good character driven stories right now. The what like a beach read. Now I'm not going like full on uh smutty romance beach read, but I mean I've been reading a lot of Barbara King Solver. So like stuff that's like just really good like character driven stories. Really vivid character studies. And I think, she's really good at that. But nothing that's too hard on the old noggin right now, just because uh, I've got a lot going on. So in order to stay like really connected to a book, it has to be pretty easy to pick up and put down over and over again, rather than just being able to really concentrate on it. There are definitely like times in my life where I have read more challenging things and uh, have prided myself on my ability to like focus on fairly intellectual type literature. But I'm not in that spot right now. Um, I think I'm utilizing reading as less of a growth tool right now and more of like an entertainment tool, because um, I would rather read for entertainment than like scroll on my phone or something like that.
And that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, you can find all the episodes on all major streaming platforms and also at the Songwriters on Process website. That is at songwritersonpodcast.com. Pre-2020, this was not a pod. I was transcribing all of the interviews. So you can find all of them, hundreds of them, many hundreds of them on the Songwriters on Process website. You'll find both the transcribed interviews and the pod there. Take a deep dive, spend a day. These are great conversations with songwriters just about the writing process. Also, my book, Desolation, a heavy metal memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, is out now worldwide on Hachette Books. You can find it online in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God, and it's his memoir. Again, that is called Desolation, a heavy metal memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari. I am biased, but that's a damn good book. My email, ben@songwritersonprocess.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love suggestions, questions, comments. People always email me and tell me who they want to see on the pod next. You never know. Send me an email, ben@songwritersonprocess.com. That's it for me, everyone. Have a great day.